I never thought that embarrassment could come dressed in fancy clothes and poured into a glass of champagne. But there I was, sitting in the third row at my younger sister's wedding. I wore the only nice dress I owned, trying not to stand out. In a room full of people who looked like they stepped out of a fashion magazine. Everyone seemed so perfect, so polished. I felt like I didn't belong. My 9-year-old son, Robert, sat beside me in a little suit that I had to save up for by stretching 2 paychecks. He looked proud and excited to be there, smiling and swinging his legs under the table. He thought, this day would make us feel like we were part of the family again. Maybe, deep down, I hoped that too. Maria, my sister, looked like a movie star. She moved through the day like everything was made just for her. She has always had that kind of charm, beautiful, confident, loved by everyone, especially our mother. Maria got all the praise, while I got the comparisons. She was the center of attention. I learned to stay in the background. Still, I came to support her. I smiled, I clapped when they kissed, and I kept my voice calm when people said things like, "You're the older sister? You don't look like you have a 9-year-old." I took it all in stride. Then came the speeches. The groom's best friend spoke first. He shared a few funny stories that made the guests chuckle. Nothing too deep. Just light fun. Then it was Maria's turn to speak. I thought she might say something emotional, maybe something sweet about love or about our childhood. I even picked up my glass ready to toast her. For a moment, I believed she might say something kind about me. She lifted her glass, smiling brightly. "Thank you all so much for being here," she said. "It means everything to us." Then she added, "And of course, I want to say something special about my big sister." I looked at Robert and gave him a little smile. He looked back up at me with hope in his eyes. We both waited. Maria continued. "Ashley's been such a role model. She's a single mom. She's strong, independent, and clearly unwanted by anyone else." The room burst into laughter. My heart dropped. At first, I thought I heard her wrong. But no, she was still smiling, like she had just told the most charming joke in the world. Some people looked unsure, but most of them laughed even harder. I sat frozen as glasses clinked and smiles beamed around the room. That moment hurt more than I ever expected. It wasn't just a joke. It was a reminder that no matter how hard I tried, I'd always be the outsider, even at my own sister's happiest day. I didn't know where to look. My heart was beating so loud it felt like it was in my ears. Robert pulled on my sleeve and whispered, "Why did she say that about you, Mama?" I didn't know what to say. I didn't even have time to answer before my mother spoke up from her table. She said loudly, like it was no big deal, "She's used goods, but hey, she still looks okay for her age." More laughter followed. This time it was louder, sharper, the kind of laughter that feels like it cuts into your skin, the kind that tells you everyone in the room now sees you differently. Not as a guest, not as part of the family, just someone to laugh at, someone to feel sorry for, someone to be embarrassed about. I sat there, frozen. I couldn't breathe. My face felt hot, but I wouldn't let myself cry. Not in front of Robert, not in front of them. I clenched my napkin under the table, squeezing it like it could hold me up. I looked around the room, hoping to find someone, anyone, who might look at me with kindness. My grandfather stared at his plate. My cousin smiled down at her phone. Even my uncle, the one who used to say I reminded him of my father, didn't lift his head. Robert looked confused. His little eyebrows were pulled together, and I could see he didn't understand. He was hurt. That's what broke my heart. Not the words, not the laughter, not the shame. It was seeing my son try to make sense of why his mother, the woman, who bandaged his knees and stayed up helping him with homework, was being laughed at by her own family. I wanted to leave. I wanted to take Robert's hand, walk out the door, and never come back. But something stopped me. I wanted to speak. I wanted to tell them they didn't know what I had been through, what I had survived. I wanted to tell them they were wrong about me. But my mouth was dry. My legs were shaking under the table. I couldn't move. Then, before I could do anything, I heard the sound of a chair being pushed back. I looked up. John, the groom, Maria's perfect, polite fiancé, stood up. He didn't look happy. He didn't look at Maria. He didn't look at the guests. He looked straight at me. And in that moment, something about the way he looked at me made the whole room go quiet. I could feel something was about to happen. Not someone saving me, not a big argument, but something real. Something that had been building for a long time. People often think being the older sister means you lead the way, that you're someone others look up to. But in my family, I wasn't seen as a leader. I was more like a warning of what not to become. My name is Betty. I'm 36 years old. I'm a single mom, and I've always been the outsider in my family, the one who doesn't fit in. I live in a small one-bedroom apartment at the edge of town with my son Robert. He's 9 years old, the best thing that ever happened to me, and the only reason I walk into family gatherings that usually make me feel small. I work 2 jobs. In the mornings, I'm at a local cafe. At night, I work the front desk at a small hotel. My life isn't fancy, but it's mine. On Sundays, I make Robert pancakes. I know how to fix holes in his jeans with a sewing kit, and he calls me his superhero. That's enough to keep me going, even on the hardest days. But being a single mom in my family made me feel like I had failed. My mother, Mary, made sure I felt that way at every holiday and every dinner. She cares a lot about how things look to others. She says Maria's wedding is a chance to fix the family's image. Maria is 6 years younger than me. She's pretty, successful, and always seemed to get everything without asking. But somehow she always made it look like she earned it. She's the favorite. Mary loves her deeply. If Maria sneezed, our mom would hand her a silk handkerchief. If I got sick, she told me to take some vitamins and stop whining. When I got pregnant with Robert, everything changed. I was 27 and in love. The man I was with said he would stay by my side. But by the 6th month, he disappeared. No call, no message, just gone. My family didn't ask questions. They didn't offer help. They gave me silence, judgment, and I told you so. But I had Robert. And the moment I held him in my arms, all those hurtful things they said didn't matter. Anymore, still. Deep down, I hoped they would one day see me not as a failure, not just as a single mom, but as someone they could be proud of. Maybe that's why I said yes when I got the invitation to Maria's wedding, even though I wasn't in the wedding party. Even though they spelled my name wrong on the RSVP, even though I had to rent a dress and do my own hair in the bathroom while Robert practiced his smile in his little tie. I told myself this could be closure. Maybe, just maybe, it was their quiet way of reaching out to me. The wedding venue was beautiful. White roses, golden plates, soft music playing from a string quartet. Maria looked like she came out of a magazine. All smiles and sparkle, soaking in every compliment and photo. But when she walked past me, her smile faded just for a second. "You made it," she said. She said it like she didn't expect me to. "Come." She looked down at Robert and said, "He's getting big." No hug, no warmth, just small talk. Then she turned back to the spotlight. My mother, Mary, didn't even look at me. She walked right past like I was one of the staff handing out drinks. But Robert was glowing. He looked up at the chandelier and said it looked like a spaceship. He whispered that Maria looked like a princess. Seeing how happy he was just being there made me decide to stay for the reception, even though I could already feel that old pain in my chest, the one that comes from not fitting in. We found our table, table 15, near the back, close to the bathrooms. I gave a quiet laugh to myself. Of course, they'd put us there. We ate our salads. Robert spilled a bit of chocolate mousse on his tie, and I helped him clean it. I avoided eye contact with my mom and tried not to hear my name whispered behind clinking glasses. Then the speeches started. That's when I realized this night wasn't about family love or making peace. It was another show. Another spotlight. Moment for Maria. And I was about to become the joke. The speeches began the usual way. Sweet, a little too practiced. Maria stood up tall, holding a glass of champagne in her hand. Her dress sparkled under the lights, and the room went quiet. As everyone waited for her to speak, she smiled and paused, letting the silence stretch. "I want to thank all of you for being here," she said. "This is the happiest day of my life, and I'm surrounded by the people who matter most to me." I sat at the back table, telling myself maybe she meant me too. Robert was on the edge of his seat, kicking his legs, completely caught up in the magic of the moment. Maria kept talking about her new husband John, about love and fate. I started to relax. Maybe, just maybe, she wouldn't say anything hurtful. But then she paused and changed her tone. "And of course," she said with a sly smile, "I want to give a shout out to my big sister." The room turned. I felt the spotlight shift. I sat up straighter and gave a polite smile. "She's always been such a strong example," Maria said, sounding sweet but sharp. "She's the bravest woman I know. She raised a child on her own. No husband, no partner, just her and, well, whoever was nice enough to babysit." People chuckled. My stomach turned, but seriously, she added, her voice light. "It's amazing how she's managed, being a single mom, unwanted by anyone, and still showing up." Then came the real laughter. Loud, honest, cruel. I felt like all the air had been knocked out of me. My face got hot, and my hands froze, still holding the napkin in my lap. I looked over at Robert. He was frowning, confused, looking around the room like he was trying to figure out why everyone was laughing at his mom. Then came the worst part. My mother, Mary, laughed louder than anyone else. She leaned toward the people at her table and said, just loud enough for others to hear, "She's a used product, but she still cleans up nicely." More laughter followed. This time it was meaner. No one even tried to hide how cruel it was. My eyes blurred. It felt like I had been slapped, but no one had touched me. Instead, they just sat around laughing like it was normal, like it was okay, to make fun of a woman who had worked day and night for almost 11 years to raise her son with love and care. Like being alone made me worth less. I looked down at Robert. His smile was gone. He leaned into me and whispered, "Why did she say that? What does she mean?" I wanted to explain, to protect him from the pain. But I couldn't find the words. I couldn't shield him from the truth. This is how our family sees me. My heart was racing. I looked around the room, hoping someone would stand up and say it was enough. Hoping someone would stop the laughter. But no one did. A few people looked uncomfortable, but they stayed quiet. They looked down at their glasses, their plates, their phones. Even Grandpa William, the man who used to call me his little lion when I was a child, didn't look at me. He was there, but in that moment, I felt like I had no one. I was alone again. The truth is, I could have taken it if it was just about me. I've dealt with this kind of treatment for years. I could have smiled, held Robert's hand, and walked out with my head high. But this time it was different. I saw the confusion in my son's eyes. I saw him trying to understand why the same people who had been clapping and cheering were now laughing at his mother. That broke something in me. Stood up. Not because I had something to say, not because I wanted attention. I just needed to get out of that room. I needed air. I needed to breathe without choking on the shame they were throwing at me. I pushed my chair back. My hands were shaking. Then I heard another chair scrape across the floor. John, the groom, was standing up. His face looked pale, and his jaw was tight. Without asking, he took the microphone from Maria. The room went quiet. It felt like the air had changed, like it suddenly got colder. No more laughing, no more whispering. Just silence. I knew whatever was about to happen wasn't part of the plan. John stood with one hand on the table and the other holding the microphone. His eyes weren't on Maria, or Mary, or the people who had laughed. His eyes were on me. Just me. For a moment, I thought maybe he'd try to make a joke to calm things down. Maybe say something smooth, the way people in my family usually do, when things get awkward. They like to act like nothing happened. They call it humor. They call it tradition. But John didn't do that. He didn't smile. He didn't laugh. His face was serious, and there was something in his eyes, anger maybe, but also something deeper. Like he couldn't believe what had just happened. Like he was hurt by it. Before he could speak, I stood up and reached for Robert's hand. Was ready to leave. quietly and with pride. I wasn't going to let them see me cry. I wasn't going to let them win. I'd done it before, and I could do it again. But as I turned to walk away, John spoke. His voice was low, steady, and clear. "Betty." "Don't go." I stopped. The room turned to look at him. People started whispering, like dry leaves rustling in the wind. Maria went stiff. Mary narrowed her eyes. The DJ reached for the music controls but froze when John raised his hand. He didn't look at anyone else. Just me. "I can't pretend. I'm okay with what just happened," he said. "I won't stand here and let that kind of cruelty be treated like a joke." The room went still again. John stepped away from the head table and slowly walked toward us. He didn't rush. Each step looked heavy, like he was pushing through something big. He stopped near our table, me, Robert, the untouched plates of salad, and looked around at the guests. "I've heard a lot about family this past year while planning this wedding," he said. "People talked about appearances, traditions, and loyalty, but what I just saw, that wasn't family. That was making fun of someone and calling it a celebration." The guests shifted in their seats. Some looked at Mary. Others stared down at their glasses, but no one said a word. John turned to Maria. "You made fun of your sister for being a single mom, for raising her child alone. You laughed, and worse, you did it in front of her son." Maria opened her mouth, but no words came out. John didn't wait for her to speak. Betty didn't ask to be in that position, but she showed up. She sat quietly in the back. She smiled. "She brought her son to see your special day, and you turned that into a joke." I had never seen Maria look so small until then. John looked back at everyone in the room. Betty didn't stand up here asking for attention. She didn't ask for pity. She's never needed the spotlight. But I can't stay quiet. If I'm going to marry into a family that thinks being mean is funny, and that shame is some kind of tradition, then I need to ask myself what kind of man I want to be. People gasped. A woman at the next table whispered, "Is this really happening?" Someone dropped a fork. Robert looked up at me with wide, surprised eyes. I didn't know what to say or do. I came to this wedding just hoping to get through it quietly. I never thought anyone would stand up for me. Not like this. Not in front of everyone. John looked down at Robert and gave him a gentle nod. "Your mom is the strongest person in this room. Don't forget that." Then he turned back to the guests one last time. "I think I've seen enough." He placed the microphone on the table, walked past Maria without even looking at her, and walked straight out the door. I stood there, frozen, still holding Robert's hand. The music didn't start. No one moved. It was like someone had taken all the air out of the room. The fairy tale was broken. But for the first time in a long time, I wasn't the one who felt broken. When John left the reception hall, it was like someone flipped a switch. No one clapped. No one cheered. The only sounds were the low hum of the air conditioner and the soft clink of a spoon hitting a glass. Everyone sat still, their eyes moving between me, Maria, and the door John had just walked through. Maria stood at the head table looking stunned, like she'd been slapped. Her perfect posture was gone. Her shoulders drooped under the weight of what had just happened. She looked around, but the faces staring back weren't smiling anymore. Some looked shocked. Some looked embarrassed. A few even looked angry, but not at John. At her. Mary was the first to speak. She stood up fast, her chair making a loud screech on the floor. "What an ungrateful boy," she snapped. "He embarrassed you in front of everyone. Just like your sister. Selfish." But this time, her voice didn't have the power it used to. It didn't fill the room. It just fell flat. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. For the first time in my life, I didn't have to. I didn't feel small under her voice. I looked at Robert. He looked up at me, unsure. "Are we leaving?" he asked quietly. "Yes. Baby," I said, brushing his hair back. "We're going home." I stood tall, took his hand, and started walking toward the door. People moved aside as we passed. Some wouldn't meet my eyes. Others looked like they wanted to say something, but didn't know how. Halfway to the exit, I heard someone say my name. Betty. I turned around. It was my grandfather, William. His eyes looked red and tired. He stood up slowly and walked toward me. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice soft and shaky. "I should have spoken up years ago." I nodded. I didn't trust myself to speak. I didn't hate him for staying quiet. I knew what silence can cost a person. I had lived it. I wasn't angry, but I also wasn't going to carry their guilt anymore. Outside, the air was cool and fresh. Robert squeezed my hand. "Is the wedding over?" he asked. I looked down at him and smiled. "Yeah," I said. "I think it ended the way it needed to." We drove home in silence. No music. Just the sound of the tires on the road and Robert tapping his fingers on the armrest. That night, I tucked him into bed, kissed his forehead, and stood at his door, a little longer than usual. He didn't ask any more questions. He didn't have to. The next morning, I woke up to a bunch of missed calls. Most were from numbers I didn't know. A few were cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. Some were wedding guests I barely remembered. I didn't answer any of them. Then my phone buzzed again, a message from a friend who had been at the wedding. Someone recorded John's speech, the message said. "It's on YouTube. Over 100,000 views already. You need to see the comments. People are standing up for you." I opened the video. There was John, calm and strong, speaking into the microphone, standing up for me in front of everyone. And there I was, frozen in the background, holding Robert's hand. The comments were full of support. "This man is a hero. She deserved better." I'm crying watching this. Every single mom just got a little bit of justice. I didn't cry. I didn't even smile. I just felt still, like something inside me that had been tight for years had finally relaxed. That week, Maria tried to change the story. She said John overreacted, that it was just a joke, that people were being too sensitive. But it was too late. The truth was already out there, and no one was laughing anymore. A few days later, a small bunch of wildflowers showed up at my door. No name, just a little card that said, "To the Lioness." I didn't need to guess who it was from. The wedding didn't happen, but something more important did. For once, I wasn't the one who had to feel ashamed. I wasn't the one who had to say sorry. I walked out of that room with my son, my pride, and my head held high. Somewhere out there, someone reminded a whole room, and maybe the whole internet, what being truly strong looks like. It's been 7 months since the wedding that never happened. Maria and John officially ended their engagement. There was no big post, no drama, no explanation, just silence, like someone quietly erased what was supposed to be a perfect day. Maria went back to her usual life as if nothing had happened. The photos from that night disappeared from her social media. She hasn't reached out to me. I'm not sure I ever expected her to. Mary, our mother, called once, not to say sorry, but to tell me I embarrassed the family by not laughing along with the joke. I listened for about 30 seconds. Then I told her something I never thought I'd be brave enough to say. "I'm not your scapegoat anymore." Then I hung up. It wasn't loud or angry. It was quiet, clear, and final. That moment made me realize something. I didn't need a big apology from my family. I didn't need them to suddenly treat me with respect. I just needed to stop waiting for them to give me permission to respect myself. My life didn't magically change. I still work long hours. Some nights, I still make 2 dinners, pancakes, for Robert, and something healthier for me. But I walk differently now. I'm not carrying years of shame on my back. I don't hide at the edges of the room anymore. Robert has changed too. He asks more questions, smart ones. He wonders why some people are mean and why others are brave. He talks about John like he's a superhero. Sometimes he even pretends to give speeches with his action figures, standing up for others. One day, I watch him. I know deep inside that what he saw that night will stay with him. It's helping shape the kind of man he'll grow into, strong, kind, and brave enough to speak up when it matters. One night, as we were brushing our teeth, Robert looked at me in the mirror and asked, "Mom, are you still sad about what Aunt Maria said?" I paused, then said, "Not anymore. Why?" He shrugged, his chin covered in toothpaste. "Because I think you won, even though it wasn't a fight." That stayed with me. Because he was right. I didn't yell. I didn't insult anyone. I didn't demand justice or cry in front of a crowd. I didn't need to, and somehow that made it feel like a real win. I simply stood up, held my son's hand, and walked away. And then someone I didn't expect decided that staying silent wasn't good enough anymore. John didn't just speak up for me. He showed everyone in that room what real love looks like. Not the kind that wears a fancy suit or walks down the aisle. Real love is the kind that sees someone being hurt and says, "No, not today." If I've learned anything from all of this, it's this. Being alone doesn't mean you're not wanted. Being kind doesn't mean you're weak. And once you find your dignity again, no one can take it away from you. So no, I didn't dance at my sister's wedding. I didn't raise a glass or throw a bouquet. I didn't cry under pretty lights. But I did leave with something much more important than their approval. I left with my head held high, my son by my side, and a deep, quiet confidence that I don't have to explain myself to anyone ever again. That was the ending no one expected. And exactly the one I deserved. If this story touched you, if you've ever been made to feel small, ignored, or silenced in a room where people should have stood with you, please remember this. Your voice matters. Your worth matters. You are not alone. If you found strength in this story, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs it, and leave a comment below. I'd love to know, have you ever had a moment when someone finally stood up for you? Or a time when you had to stand up for yourself? And if you want to hear more real stories, ones that speak the truth, challenge what's expected, and remind us what it means to be human, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss what's coming next. Thank you for being here.